All right, let me... All right, going live now. Hey, what's going on? This is Righteous Anger Podcast. Not trying to get in your business, but we're back. Thanks for being here. So, we've got Chad. It's episode 15. It's really awesome.
Doing the Raider voice.
Stay tuned. So episode number 15 with Chad Booher. Is it Booher or Booher?
No H when you say it.
Yeah, but there's an H when you spell it. How confusing is that?
I know.
What are you, German? You're a German man?
German descendant, yep.
All right.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, we'll have some serious questions for you and your ancestry. Like, what's up with that music? Like electronic music you guys are so good at. That's what I want to know. So you guys thought I was going to go Nazi, didn't you?
I was thinking Du hast.
Du hast.
Yeah.
Du hast. Does anybody
the
even...
anger issues, maybe you can go there.
Does anybody even know about that anymore?
Suppression of anger. Like, get it out. Go to the forest. Run. Do what you got to do.
Is that a thing?
Don't like, genocide people. Just don't do that.
Just don't do that. That's evil.
Make music, yeah. Like, I'm cool with that. Make as much metal as your heart can handle.
So what are we going to do? We are going to do the official opening of the show here. All right? I want everybody to STFU, whatever that means. All I know is whenever you see that.
Shut the front. Something.
Shut the front.
Door.
Up. Upanishad. You like that?
Knock on wood on that one.
All right. So I want to go ahead and tell everybody that I'm so happy you're here for the 15th episode of the Righteous Anger Podcast, where Eric and I, Leo, sit down and we talk and we have great conversations with people from all walks of life. Now, it just so happens that Eric is an atheist, political atheist, to be exact.
Yeah, that's my title.
And then I'm Leo. I just happen to be a Christian. What can I say? And we show the world that, guess what? We can actually coexist and understand one another. We've done it many times, and we plan on doing it again and again.
Oh.
Now, for today's show, we've got a special guest. His name is Chad Booher. He once was atheist. Now he's not. In fact, he's Christian. Dun, dun, dun. Boo. That was Eric on the slide whistle. It's usually me. Well played. So we're going to talk to him about sort of what got into his senses, what made him leave his senses and become a great Christian man, as we're all called to be. I'm sure Eric will have some interesting questions. I will have interesting questions, and hopefully you guys have interesting questions too. You guys that are checking out the live part of this show, you guys can go ahead and type your questions in right there in the little typing box thingy, whatever that's called. Comment box. Thank you, Eric. Eric is technologically advanced in his brain.
One more.
And so thanks for coming, Chad.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Levels sound good. I can hear the Chad. All right.
The Chad.
The Chad.
We've just got a nickname for him now.
The Shad. I call him the Shad, actually.
Le Shad.
Le Shad. Yeah. All right. So, Chad, let's start off. And, all right, there's a lot of... Let's just put it this way. I know we're supposed to be talking about Black Lives Matters. I know we're supposed to be talking about LGBTQ XY triple D. I know we're supposed to be talking about what's another one? Chris Brown again, right? No?
Trump.
I know we're supposed to be talking politics. But let me tell you, I don't think Blue Moon. Eric's put out the Blue Moon because he thinks he's going to get money. I don't think...
Notice me, senpai.
I don't think that that's the most important thing. I think, in my opinion, okay, my 34 years of life, all right, which is not many to some it's ancient. I don't think any of those matter as much as the one question of, is there a God? If so, did he create us and why? So, Chad?
Yeah, man. Unleash.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you've probably heard this before. A.W. Tozer said the most important thing about you is what you think about God. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. It depends on where you stand on the side of the fence. I mean, obviously, Eric has a different point of view, and I've been down that road too. I don't know where in context to you,
Yeah.
but I think there's definitely a lot of truth to how you define your reality. I mean, no two people see the world the same, no two worldviews are the same, but that question is obviously an important question because it determines what happens after life.
If you believe that there is, in fact, an after
Correct.
life.
Correct. So then that shapes what you're living for today, which in turn shapes how you live your life today. So I do think that it's important to answer that question.
All right.
Cool. And what is that for you?
For me?
Yes. You're the guest, man.
You must produce. You must give us something. No,
Show me what you got.
Yeah.
It only works if I talk.
So listen, why don't you just go ahead and make a case for Christianity?
Ooh. Slide whistle that one.
That's a good start, man. It's getting deep. I definitely don't think anyone's ever won over with an argument. I think that's where I kind of started wrong, maybe on the wrong foot with myself. I guess part of my story would be that's kind of good to touch on for that is grew up, no real church experience, weddings, funerals, that kind of stuff. Had one very poor experience when I was young.
What was the priest's name?
Yeah.
Oh.
Not exactly.
High five, Catholics. No? Okay.
Well, no. I can't remember. I'd have to actually look and see what denomination the church was. But I asked my mom if I could go to church, and she didn't know much about churches either at the time. So she's like, okay, if you really want to go to church, I'll let you go to church. So she went to the church that was right around the corner, not knowing. I mean, there's no difference. Like, to her, church is church, right? And
Hey, there's a cross there. Let's go there.
yeah.
They pray to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And we walked in, and the sermon was about the idea that the people that have, whether they're deaf or they're blind, those kind of things, physical disabilities, they're all given to them by God as punishments for their sins. And it just, the way it was phrased didn't make any sense to my mom. It obviously sounded very condemning.
Whoa. Say that last part again?
Which part?
What was the ideology?
That all of those things that people have as physical disabilities, those ailments, whether it's blindness or being deaf, or
you were cursed. You were cursed for your parents or
your sins.
Sins, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's biblical.
Yeah. So that was a little rough. So we never went back to church at that point. And then I actually got to a point. There was like agnosticism in there because I wasn't really sure if there was something. Maybe there was, but I didn't know what it was, and everything from maybe it's like Wiccan, maybe it's like the powers of the earth, or you see too many Star Wars movies, you think it's the Force that surrounds us. I mean, I grew up in the Star Wars era there, so
1970s.
Well, 80 was the first one, so 80 through.
So you're a 70s baby.
79 is the first one.
You're an 80 baby.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're not that much older. You're not that much older. You're way more mature than either one of us, but you're definitely not that much older.
I don't know if I'd go that far. So then eventually I got to a point where I wanted to just argue with Christians about the Bible.
Yeah, you gotta let that go, man.
So that led me to get it to a point of, okay, well, if they're going to argue with me about what the Bible says, so you know how it would be. We'd talk about any social justice issue. Could be abortion, could be equal rights, whatever it is, and that we'd get on that topic, and I'd say, okay, but why do you believe that? And they'd say, well, the Bible says X, and I never had a rebuttal, so I wanted to read the Bible so I could say, yeah, but it also says Y, or Z or whatever.
Kind of what Eric was doing to me last week.
Yeah.
You come back with another scripture that says something completely different.
Yeah,
that usually doesn't work.
No. Well, I didn't find that out till a little bit later, but yeah. So I walked into a Bible store one day, and of course don't have the any inclination what I'm doing, but I picked up a Bible and said, "Oh, this says Study Bible. It's a King James version. That's the standard, right? That's the language they spoke back then." I don't know anything about that stuff at that point.
Oh, we had a little bit of a discussion about that in the last episode, about how the translations so widely differ. So
yeah, well, and there's a scale for that. If you look it up, you can see there's word for word versus idea for idea.
yeah,
So you can kind of tell. The word for word works for studying like deep word studies on what stuff was and what it came from, but the idea for idea is a little bit easier for people to grasp and understand and get the message. So, but yeah, that's where I started. So that kind of, yeah.
So you read the Bible.
So I started to read it. Again,
Okay.
don't know anything about it. Start reading it cover to cover, left to right. So you get through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, that kind of stuff, and then I kind of fizzled out. That those get into some chapters that can be very difficult if you're trying to read it, thinking that there's something there to argue or pinpoint. The scripture's a little bit more difficult there if you're not understanding the overall picture of what's going on. So, but I had some friends there at where I worked that kind of I'd ask them questions about it. They didn't really understand why I was reading it. They just thought it was cool that I was trying to read it and study it. So they would answer some questions, which was helpful. And a lot of it actually started to make sense to me, which was interesting. It was almost scary because I'm reading it going, okay, I kind of see how some of this actually would work. And then to think about when it was written, how it was written, the kind of people that wrote it, how old it is, to really think, okay, if you wrote something like that today, how easy that would be for somebody to want to throw rocks at it, disprove it, whatever, tear holes in it.
Oh, yeah.
But to write it then with what they had available, with what they could see and hear and understand, and it makes it a little bit harder to disprove some of that stuff. So it made me think a little bit more about it. And then what really happened was a personal experience, and I think that's where the biggest thing is. So, and Leo knows a little bit of my story from before, but and that's why I say an argument doesn't win somebody over. So that's my point up to there. None of those arguments were ever going to win me over, but I needed that personal experience to happen. It needed to come alive. It needed to mean something. So for me, and I guess I should stop you guys.
No, you
Okay.
go for it, man.
For me,
I will control this ship. Continue.
Where's your gavel?
Where's my gavel?
onward.
Onward.
No, for me,
Whenever you hear the bell, it's either because someone said something incredibly racist and hilarious, sexist and hilarious. What are some other ists?
Bigoted and hilarious.
That's not an ist.
Okay.
Bigoted and hilarious, or anything that
Sexist.
sex. Ooh, I'll be bringing myself a couple times for that. All right. So as you were saying, it's not the argument that would win you over or anybody,
Right.
as you put it. It's the experience. So what was your experience, Chad?
So my wife and I we dated since 2000. We moved down here in 2004. We got engaged in 2004, married in 2009. And then right around 2011, we started to have some issues in our marriage. And we had some bumps and things like that along the way, but we kind of stuck together. And we moved from Pennsylvania down to here, so it was kind of a long way. It wasn't like we could just easily split and go back to our houses or anything like that. We lived down here, both had jobs. So I think that part of that was a tension that kept us together too for the time to kind of, you didn't really want to, where were you going to go? And you live in Northern Virginia. You guys know it's not like you can just go get an apartment around the corner for what one person makes normally. So it's
Not easily.
Not easily, no. So that kept us together for a while, but there were ups and downs, and we had a lot of good times, don't get me wrong, but we were one of those couples that you didn't see us fight. And anybody that ever says, oh yeah, we don't fight. Now looking back on it,
BS.
That's not a good thing either. If they really don't, that's unhealthy.
And I think it's the word fight, and especially in this generation where, any sort of negativity whatsoever is anathema. So instead of fight, I like to use the word arguments. If you don't know how to have an argument with your spouse, which means that you avoid arguments, you avoid that stuff. What you end up getting is major resentment. And I think Eric can probably attest to that. But, continue.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, no two people have the same worldview. Nobody. We could agree on 99% of stuff, but there's going to be something we don't agree on. And so you're going to end up with tension. There's going to be disagreements. But what happened in our relationship is eventually we got to a point where it was like, which you may have heard from other people, you get to a point where you're like basically roommates.
Yeah.
You're just living in the same house, but you're not really married anymore.
Not in a romantic relationship.
No. And so that's kind of whenever things started to fall apart. And there were other things that were feeding into it. I mean, you're trying to still express your needs, and you're trying to do things where you're feeding off of things that you shouldn't be feeding off of. And we got to a point, it was kind of a breaking point for us where we, some things kind of came to light. The truth comes to light, and we seriously had a conversation about divorce. It was very, very emotionally upsetting and disturbing, but it was the first time it wasn't just thrown around in an argument. It was like a serious conversation about it.
The D word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did she stand religiously?
Grew up Catholic, not practicing for the most part.
So really Catholic.
Well, that's pretty common. A lot of Catholics mourn their faith.
The only Catholic that I've ever met, besides maybe priests and nuns, you're going to be a nun, you're going to work for Jesus.
Oh, dear.
For those of you who know that clip, was Catholic Craig, who I've been trying to get on the show, but he's in South Africa, I think, right now.
That guy's like beyond my scope of understanding.
Oh, I can't wait till he comes on the show to drop some Catholic knowledge bombs. And he was not religious. Like growing up, he wasn't forced into religion or anything. He became a Catholic after, I guess, being a knowledgeable.
That's so strange.
Yeah, he goes from like reason, as you guys, as atheists put it, going from reason to faith, which is like. It's what's a good simile to that? That's kind of like
a bald guy growing hair.
That's a terrible simile, but I understand you.
Yeah,
and that's the most important thing. All right, sorry, but we digress.
No, it just hit that breaking point, and we talked about it. We split apart for a couple days, and she was staying with a friend, and then she came back to the house so we could really talk about it. And we were talking about what we were going to do. And I remember she didn't want to give up on the marriage. She didn't want to. And so she said, will you try counseling? Not to give up on it. Let's try to make this work.
But you were like checked out at that point?
Yeah, I was really like at that, standing at the doorway, kind of checked out, where I was about ready just to walk out.
Were you already thinking like freedom?
No, it was more. I mean, it's one of those things where you get uneasy. I think any time of change, you get really that knot where you get uneasy in your stomach about.
So
stuff.
you were a mature guy, because a lot of guys, I think. I mean, so maybe your situation wasn't as bad as some other people's situations, but some guys just go. They're already, like, as soon as divorce gets into their head, they're already thinking about, all right, back in the game, back in the saddle. Now I'm not getting married ever again this time.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, like, you can understand that mentality, but you didn't have that mentality.
No.
Why didn't you have that mentality?
That's a good question. That's a real good question.
That's what I do.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to think back to what it was like at the time, and maybe it was because I didn't have anything to jump right into. There wasn't.
Are we talking about? Whoa, what are we talking about here? We're not talking about like another relationship to jump into.
Yeah, there wasn't anything to, because I think some guys, that's where they get to, is they have that relationship or something where they're like, no, I could go to this. This is a solid thing.
There's greener grass, as they say.
Right.
I have this like I wouldn't say it haunts me, but I'm sure it does, like on a subconscious level. I remember being like, I think I was 11 years old, 11 or 12. My parents were talking. My dad was trying to divorce my mom because he had already shacked up with a coworker, and he ended up. Sorry, Dad, I'm outing you. And she was pregnant, and so it was like, dude, you're pretty much. I mean, you get somebody pregnant outside of your marriage, you've got quite the decision to make now. It's like, crap, I'm ruining lives left and right now. Like, now I have to make a decision. So he made a decision to go ahead and divorce my mom. My mom was not about it. And I remember like it was yesterday, sitting in the steps, eavesdropping on them. And my mom going, the grass is greener, huh? grass is greener, huh? And so now anytime I think of divorce, I hear my mom's voice. Grass is greener, huh? Grass is greener, ain't it?
It's always greener where you're watering it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Knowledge bomb.
I was supposed to throw the mic at you.
Truth.
Now, right?
Yep,
Truth.
there it is.
Maybe
Face,
I should
aim for the face.
I should get like a foam microphone
So you just throw it around.
so they can just drop it right.
Have a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm out of mics, guys. This is
I'm just keep
I've
dropping. them.
dropped it too many times.
All right, so okay, as you were saying, you don't know why you were mature to that level at that point. How old were you?
2011, so I would have been 30.
Okay, so yeah, 30-year-old man. And so you guys go to counseling?
No, so that's the interesting way. This is where the experience comes in. So I didn't know what to do at that point. I didn't know if I wanted to say yes to that. And I remember I went upstairs to what was my office at the time. It's my son's room now, which is kind of cool, and to look back on it. And
you guys hadn't had kids yet.
We hadn't had kids yet. Yeah, so still dinks, and
Once again, he doesn't have that sort of like, because a lot of times kids, people stay in bad relationships because of the kids, and so you didn't even have that to sort of use as a reason.
Mm-mm.
Wow, so you could have just been like
could have bailed,
peace, but you didn't. What ended up happening?
Yeah, so I went upstairs, was in the office, was pacing around. If you ever been in those difficult situations where you don't know what to do, you just kind of like, you just can't, you're fidgety, and you just don't want to do, so you're just pacing. So I was in a room probably about this size, and just pacing back and forth. And I remember looking down and seeing the study Bible there. And it just one of those moments where I was like, okay. And it was almost mocking, but I was like, okay.
Now before you say this, Chad, why did you have that study Bible?
Well, that was to argue with Christians on whether or not they knew what they were talking about.
So it was your weapon basically to refute Christianity,
right?
Okay,
right. And so I remember looking at it and going, okay, remembering those times when some of the stuff made sense and stuff, but I kind of just threw down the gauntlet and said, okay, if you're real, Jesus, you need to show me right now. And I remember I put my thumb at the back of the book, kind of like you do the deck of cards, and I just kind of spun the book. Remind you, I said Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, stuck in Deuteronomy with all the different stuff there. And so I've never read past that point. I think it's a book that reads from cover to cover. Which it's not. Right. And I'm flipping through it, and I stop, put my finger on the page, and I look down at the verse, and the verse was exactly what was going on in the relationship that was between us. It was the number one root issue of what was going on between my wife and I.
Do you remember what that was? It's okay if you don't. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was keeping us from being intimate with one another, and it was really just something that it was right on the money, and so that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is thousands page long, tens of thousands of words. It's in an area I've never seen. I looked all around the page to make sure, like, okay, did I just luck into where this whole book, this whole chapter at that point was about that? No, it was just that section. And so, I was in 1 Corinthians, so again, completely outside of anything that I had read at that point, complete other end of the Bible.
You didn't even know what a Corinthian was.
No, I had no idea why there was a 1 and a 2.
What's the point of that, right?
I didn't know that was the New Testament. Didn't know that there was a difference between the two. I had no idea at that point what was going on, and that was the moment where I was like, okay, I cannot reason or coincidence this out. Like, if the rest of the pages were like it, I might have tried flipping it again, but I was just like, I couldn't. The experience was too much for it to be exactly what I needed to read. So I said, okay, if this happens, like. I broke down at that point. I remember breaking down, and I fell to my knees and said, okay, then I will trust for a time that this is right. And so I went downstairs and said to my wife, I said, I won't do counseling, but I'll go to church. But I totally threw the curveball at her with that one too, because again, still trying to push back on it. I had this whole preconceived notion, again, Western Pennsylvania, towns where you got to drive 20 minutes to get to anything, cows everywhere kind of stuff. Like you weren't really close to anything. The churches there were all, single big building churches with the steeples and wooden pews. And so I wasn't familiar with this whole non-denominational movement of churches that meets in different places and doesn't have a permanent building. And so I kind of threw the gauntlet at my wife and said, okay, I'll go to church, but here's the thing. I don't want this big, giant wooden doors on the church where you open them and they creak and everybody in their seats turns around and goes, oh, look, new people. Like I didn't want that. So I kind of thought I was throwing her a curveball a little bit with that, because that meant, what was she going to do, right? Like, that's the only way churches are. But
now, what do you mean you thought you were throwing her a curveball, though?
Because I said I wouldn't go to counseling, but I'd go to church. But I figured if I gave her those ultimatums for what a church couldn't be, she couldn't find anything,
and it would never happen.
So
you were still fighting.
I was still resistant.
You were still resisting.
I was still resisting.
All right.
But then she was diligent. I mean, she went online. She started looking, researching. And I think I threw a couple of other prerequisites in there, like didn't want to dress up and wear a tie and all these, just threw these little things in there. And
which, by the way, I think, knowing you, you probably sealed the deal by saying this is how I want to receive the message. Because if you had gone to one of these other churches, which I'm gonna hurt a lot of Christians' feelings out there, but dead churches where the youngest person or the newest person was 20 years ago, proof's in the pudding, right? You go to a church where it's dead, there's a reason for that, so you kind of were like pushing yourself into the right place without even knowing it.
Well, and that's where I can look back on it and see, God's hand and all this stuff now. But yeah, I would agree with you. The one thing that's interesting about the churches dying, though, to side topic, is different denominations and different churches reach different people.
Yeah.
So yes, if they haven't had any new members, that's obviously a bad sign. That's a subtraction mentality, and that's not good. But at the same time, you can reach different people different ways. So some people are going to be attracted to and understand the Catholic faith.
Listen to Chad the diplomat. You're right. You're absolutely right. But for you, my friend,
for me, yeah,
that probably wouldn't have been a good thing.
No, I don't think it would have been. And so and I don't know that I would liked all the exercise of standing and sitting and kneeling and standing and sitting and kneeling.
Yeah, anyway. You'd have to work on your
calisthenics.
You'd have to work on your hymns.
In my hymns, that was always something I didn't realize, that the Bible wasn't there. That took me a while to even catch that in the Catholic Church, that they don't actually give you a Bible; it's a hymnal. So, yeah. Which I understand why they give the hymnals, because I don't know, that'd be a lot to memorize. But
well, it's a hymnal. There's two books that they follow in the Catholic faith. They have the Bible. I'm not counting that one. They have the hymnal book. And then they have the tradition. I forget. Catholics out there, help me out, because I can't remember what that book is called. Doxology. I don't remember what it is. Okay, but I've been to a few mini Catholic services, and there's like a thing, and they basically everybody follows the same thing on the same day,
right?
Every day out of the year. It's like everybody's on the same program, so to speak, as opposed to how other churches do it, I guess. So, all right. So where were we? She finds a church.
Yeah. So I didn't think she would, but then she came to me one day and was like, I found this church. They meet in a school. It's in Chantilly. They have a campus out here too, but the main campus is in Chantilly. They were meeting at Westfields High School. It's like, so it's a building that's meets the requirements you had. It's not like it's just a school. It's a high school, so it shouldn't be a problem for you. And then I watched some of their videos online, and everybody seems to be quirky, and they're just dressing like normal people. They're not all dressed up, and the music was good, and they played like newer songs, so it's not a whole bunch of the hymnal kind of stuff, the hymns and things that we were talking about. And, and so she's like, "We want to try it," and then I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll try it." So we went the first day. So the very first day. So this Eric might like this part of the story. So this was I remember my reaction. We went in, and they talked about baptism, and they had videos of these people, and they did them in like I hadn't seen these yet, but they did them in this I am second kind of style, if you're familiar with that. So like the dark, with just the spotlight on the person kind of feel. And they were talking about
they're sitting in it. So they're sitting in a chair. This is actually good. So I don't know if you know, but I run Vicar Studios.
It's impressive theatricality.
It's a production studio, and I can definitely I can respect that way, because if you go to some other places, right, churches, then what you get is like either no video anything, or really piss poor video production. So it's one thing to be like, okay, these guys are serious about reaching out and being modern. You know what I mean? Like being technologically modern, which is, you know what I mean? Like to somebody like me going to church, I'd be like, oh, look at these guys. They don't even know what they're doing. You know what I mean? But it just shows you that there's so many different sort of people all playing a part, because not everybody can do that.
Right.
So it's like, all right, well, we've got people that can sort of speak to people in different ways. And so like the I Am Second is all these, it's people from mainstream, athletes, musicians, you name it, right? Like whatever, mainstream, that actually became Christian somehow in their life. It seems kind of impossible, kind of hard to do that. But they did. And so what they do is they sit them down in a white chair. It's all black except for a spotlight that's on them as they tell their story. And they basically, what's called a testimony, right? So they tell the story about how they were living, why it wasn't fulfilling to them, why it was negative and hurtful, I guess, to them, injurious. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good word. And then what the turnaround was and why. So Eric's over there like, oh yeah, okay, great.
No, it's interesting that you were both convinced by production value.
Great marketing. No, I wasn't convinced by production value, but I think production value is important. I think especially in today's world, people don't take things seriously. Like if you see something and it's poorly done in any way, whether high production value versus low, okay, that's not important, but I'll tell you what, it's a heck of a lot more interesting to look at. Like, what would you rather look at? Would you rather look at some crap made by cable access, or would you rather look at National Geographic?
Don't disparage public access. I'm on public access.
I know,
Come on, man.
I know, but you hear what I'm saying though.
Yeah.
Don't you feel like you're like, okay, I'd rather watch this thing where I get to see the views, I can hear everything. Like, aren't you always trying to aspire to better quality? Technologically?
Of course I am.
Well, then you shouldn't scoff it.
I'm not scoffing it.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not scoffing it.
But yeah, but your scoff is correct if your scoff is that's what it's all about. If that's what it's all about, then there's a problem. So, continue.
Well, the funny part to that is the production value actually made it worse for me in this case because I hadn't seen any of those videos.
And you were like, dude, they're trying to...
And these are real people in the church, but I didn't know them. Because it was my first time,
and you're just like, oh, they're trying to market to us, and
you grab your purse.
I was like, well, kind of. I was like, this is almost like really weird, like because you got those things in the back of your mind, so you're thinking like, is it going to be like a cult, So you're watching these videos, and you're like, I don't know about this.
Watch the videos and wonder, like, how far off from the drinking the Flavor Aid are we?
Right, like, I'm like, are they going to pass it around later? Like, there's kind of this weird thoughts that you have in your mind. I mean, you got to remember, too, you walk in, and I'm just thinking of this, and you walk in, there's worship, and, if you've ever seen the Christian comedian that does the different styles of worship, where he talks about, like, the touchdown and the hold my baby and all this stuff.
I have not. I haven't seen that.
Those are funny. But there's true, like different people, they'll do different things with their hands whenever they're in worship. And so when you're in a room that's dark and you get the shadows of people, and again, the music's on, and you got people doing this.
I like
and,
the one-handers.
The one-handers,
The shaking it, like, what's going on?
And then there's the carry a TV, whatever. Like this.
I'm balancing a big pole.
It's like,
pole.
What else? Wait. We got to go down this road a little bit. What else?
The videos, though, it's pretty funny.
What's it called? How do they find it at home?
I think Dawkins is the guy that does that one.
Richard Dawkins?
I can't picture him that animated.
Richard Dawkins.
I can't picture him that
had
animated.
a stand-up career. I didn't know that. That's cool.
I'm trying to remember. Anyway, yeah, it's funny, but the point is that
find it yourself, kids.
Yeah, we just different styles of worship or something like that is a comedian thing. I'm sure you'll find it, but it was funny. So going into that, you're already kind of like, for me, again, being completely on the other side of the fence, being like, well, this is strange. And then the baptism videos, I'm like, this is really weird. So when we left, I was definitely hesitant. Now, I did do, what was interesting was that sparked me to start researching in the Bible baptism, because I really wanted to see what it said about it. So that raised some questions. Well, then the next week we didn't go because I didn't want to go back. It had definitely hit me where I was like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this.
That was a little weird.
Yeah. So it was
Tim Hawkins is the guy. By
Tim
the way.
Hawkins. Okay.
I'm gonna post it on the on this.
Check out the big brains on Eric.
Oh, check out the big brain on Google.
Google. Bow down to your new god, Google.
The technical boy.
The technical god.
Yeah. So the next week we didn't go. So then the following week, my wife, again, love her to death. She's been with me. She's definitely been my helper, my support in this. Really pushed me through this, because that week she said, "Look, she didn't think it was bad. She liked it, and so she said, I'm going back, and you said you would help work on the marriage. You said you wouldn't go to counseling, but you would do this.
A deal's a deal."
Yeah, that's kind of what she said. She laid down the gauntlet, and she said, you said you would do this. I'm going. You can go with me, or you don't. But like, you made the promise. And so I kind of, okay, you're right. So at that point, I said, if I'm going to make this work, if I'm going to try this, I'm going to commit to this. I did make a promise, and so I did. And our campus pastor at the time, Mike Fuster, told his story, his testimony, as the sermon for the day. And there were a lot of parallels in our story, and it was a very different experience than the first time I went. It was something where I really connected with the story.
A real person.
Yeah, and I could see them, and their story was similar to mine, and it really made a difference. So I reached out to him later that week and said, hey, I got some really burning questions. Most of them had to do with faith and baptism and different things like that. But I, because I obviously saw the baptism video before, I'm like, I don't know, I got some questions about this. And he wrote me back, and he met. I think it took us 2 weeks to coordinate, but then he and his wife met with me and my wife for lunch after church one day, and he answered all my questions. He was really truthful about the stuff. He was like, can't really say on that, and you just have to go with what the Bible says. We know it says this on this, but he wasn't trying to like add things to the scripture or anything like that, which was good. And it made me have to think some more about the stuff, which was also good, because at that point I was trying to think through the things. And obviously you can see this whole progression, right? I needed to think through it. You weren't going to win me over with an argument on either side of the fence at this point. And so we kept coming back for the messages though on Sunday, and it was like every sermon, I swore it was like, did Mike tell the senior pastor that we were going to be there? Did he write these messages for us? Like, I just felt like every message was for us, or at least for me, and it really spoke to me. So I kept trying to read after each lesson what was going on in the Bible, and to kind of see where they were at and what it said in the study Bible, and read the footnotes in the bottom. And I think that was right around the time I got my second study Bible that was in ESV, so I could actually understand it.
What was the first one? King James?
Yeah, that made that really hard. So, I think the King James I still have, and it's probably completely covered with dust. I haven't opened it in a while. King
James is awesome if you're trying to figure out like lines for a movie where you want your character to like quote the Bible, because it's always so dramatic.
Yeah.
Like I always go back to Jules Winfield in Pulp Fiction, and they will know that I am the Lord when I place my wrath upon thee. And
right.
It's like, holy crap, is this serious?
Well, it sounds so formal, like you get into weddings and stuff like that. It sounds so eloquent to have this poetic language, but when you're trying to do it and actually understand it.
And understand what it's saying, yeah.
It's just,
Well, it's a few 100 years removed, so.
Yeah. Only a few. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so we did that, and then it just started to make a difference in my life, in my wife's life, our marriage. And then I decided to be baptized. I was baptized a week later. My wife was baptized, and she didn't even know I was going to be baptized.
God, you didn't waste any time, did you?
No, it was something that kind of really struck me because more and more the word made sense and came alive. And I think that's really, I've heard that from other guys too. I don't know if it happens with everybody or if it happens with just guys.
What does that mean, the word came alive?
Well, yeah, so that's the interesting part. So when I look at this book that's 2,000 plus years old, and I'm thinking, okay, these guys wrote this how long ago?
It's about 1,600 years ago.
Well,
That's a conservative estimate.
What, the earliest part of it or the latest part of it?
Well, the oldest part of it, the Torah, is much older.
right.
It's like
Right.
2,400 years
Right,
old.
so you're talking New Testament, 1600?
Yeah.
I don't know, and see, shame on me. But continue.
So looking
I'm
at the
being
age of
very
the book,
fair. Just saying. Leo.
looking
Well-
at the age of the book and thinking, okay, when they were writing this stuff, they would have no concept of my life at that point. So to read it and have those lessons and things that were in it make sense to me now, and that they're applicable now. The concepts that they were writing about when they lived in a much different time, it really showed me a lot about what seemed to be validity in the Bible at the time, and I still look at that as valid. But the word was living and active, and what I mean by that is that it's still applied today. The people that will say, "Oh, it's antiquated," that it doesn't apply anymore. I challenge that some, only because you read through, especially in the New Testament, you read through a lot of the stuff that Paul writes, and you can see a lot of the things going on. You can see how the things that he talks about would combat the things that are going on. You can see those variations, and it hasn't strayed away from their lives much. I guess they lived it, and we're living it, and so
that goes back to
makes
something
it timeless.
That goes back to something that I like, coming from my science background, social science background. I got to be careful because there's biologists and astrologists and things that would be like, that's not science. Okay, fine, social science.
Is that like being a dentist? When they say you're not really a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. But so in anthropology we study cultures from. In cultural anthropology, we study cultures. I've studied, my expertise is in Asian cultures, specifically East Asian. So your China, your Japan, your Korea, and, some other little bits and pieces of others like Southeast and whatnot, Indian, even though that's not Far East, but it is still part of the curriculum. And, I look for truth. That's basically that's the place where I start. I go, is this truth or is it not truth? And there's a lot of people out there that go, well, there's no exclusive truth. There's no exclusive truth. Truth is what is true to you, right? Problem with that is, what about the zillions of factors that can affect a person, right? Like, for instance, we Eric and I, we talk about, things that are happening in the brain all the time, right? There's problems that people have with their brains. There's problems. Memory is a problem. Your circumstances during, the time when you're making these claims of truth, that's way too subjective. And as a scientist, I don't want to be in a subjective place. I want to be in a place where, a truly egalitarian place, where we say, okay, where are the truths? Where are the underlying, unequivocally based truths? Right? What are those? Right? Now, you can look at different books, right? You can see on my bookshelf Confucianism, Tao Te Ching. I've got the the Bhagavad Gita's somewhere around here. I've got Eastern religious books, you name it, right? And I used to be Buddhist, right? Practicing Buddhist. And the thing is, there's a lot of truth in those as well. My question to you is, why would this Judeo-Christian truth, like the lessons from that, why would that be your end-all, be-all? Why would you say that's it?
I guess it comes down to the change. You have to have that again, the word living, the personal experience. You see the change in yourself.
It's curious. I'm just saying that truth derived from personal experience isn't subjective.
Say that again.
Truth derived from personal experience is not subjective.
Well, see, the beauty of the anthropological viewpoint, or I guess you could say the height at which we try to find truth, is not from our own personal place. Like, in fact, it's anathema for an anthropologist to become what's called ethnocentric, right? So we are constantly, whenever we're researching, writing papers, or any of that, we're always trying to divorce our own ethnocentricity, and we will admit that there's a certain level of ethnocentricity that you just can't divorce yourself from when you're putting out, the findings, right? But I would say an anthropologist and an archaeologist, collectively, is looking at the whole of a culture and then subtracting that from the whole of other cultures. At least that's my process. So I look at this culture versus this culture versus this culture, and on down the line, and I say, okay, what's the similarity? Because I'm trying to get to a base human level of truth, irregardless of where you grew up.
Ding, 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 ding.
What's that?
Irregardless.
Oh, did I say a bad word? I'm not an English major.
Come on.
I'm not an English major. You go talk to my wife about that.
Just regardless.
Regardless. Excuse me.
I think you have a point, and I think it starts with the experience, but that's where even some of that. I'll be careful here to not upset you, but like this scientific,
don't worry about upsetting
scientific
me.
like method of things, you do things and then you try to continue to do them to see if they're true, to see if it repeats itself.
Experiment and repeatability.
Right. So I think it starts with the experience. It's kind of like the apple falling on the head, and then you're like, okay, so what's up with this? Why does everything fall? Kind of thing.
A Newtonian.
I know.
But that idea of you have the personal experience that leads you to think, okay, so is this really true then? Can it be repeated? And so my personal experience happened, and then I applied some of the things in the Bible, and it continued to create the results that it said it would. So then it was a matter of, okay, so if I try some of these other things, does it continue to produce the result that it says it will? And it did. And so whenever it became to the point where, as I did those things and it was infallible to me, it didn't change, then it became the truth. And what's interesting is you were talking about the truth, relative to different people. That's one of the things that I'm always interested in. If the truth is what you make it, if that's the argument, then I have to ask the question about the relative morality then, because it changes per person at different times. If I said, is lying bad, some people are going to say yes, and I'd say, okay, all the time, and some people are going to say, "Oh, what a white lie is okay." And other people might say, "Well, if I hurt somebody, it's okay, but only if it's not physically,
right?
It's emotionally. That's still okay." So, I mean, it goes down a different path for each person, and it's subjective to each moment. So, you might be able to rationalize out, what's not okay any other time, but right now it is because of this. Where biblically, the truth is the truth. It's not okay. It doesn't matter the circumstance,
right? And
so wait a second.
Oh, God.
Your wife asks if she looks fat in a dress. You just tell her the honest truth all the time?
Say, honey, I think you look beautiful in anything you wear.
Ah, clever. So you're circumventing it. You're not actually telling the truth. You're telling
not lying
her something
either.
that she wants to
you're
hear.
You're still telling her the truth, because to me, my wife looks beautiful no matter what.
Exactly.
Anybody can ask my wife, do I honestly give her the honest answer? Every time. Does she get mad every time? Every time.
Oh my gosh.
But that's not because I'm being, some kind of like perfect Christian. It's because I'm an asshole. But
ding 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 ding.
but
ding, ding. We have a winner.
Actually, Tanya said something interesting for the podcast, our last podcast, 13.
Oh boy.
14. That's right. With Eric Herman, the atheist,
nondescript atheist,
the nondescript atheist evangelist. That
you wouldn't like that.
Yeah, well,
epistemologist.
That basically he gave a thing where he was like saying, what if on someone's deathbed they're about to die and the family is in complete financial ruin, right? And to make their going a little bit easier or better or whatever, lie to them and tell them, you won the lottery. Your family's going to be fine. Is that okay to lie about that? And Tanya, I told you, I'm so in the podcast, like controlling everything, like all the doodads and stuff, that I kind of half hear everything. And she was listening. She was being a viewer. She was listening to it. And she goes, first of all, if that's not a good enough, I hate speaking for Tanya because she's actually smarter than me, but that's not a good enough analogy or whatever, because no, why would you lie to them about the situation that their family is in? Because that's the situation that their family is in. Like to lie to them at that point it doesn't, for what? You know what I mean?
It doesn't hurt them.
It doesn't help them. It doesn't help you.
It lets them pass in peace.
Maybe.
It might.
Maybe, but maybe they're like, this person's totally lying to me.
If they don't believe there's anything afterwards, what's the end game there?
That also precludes the idea of a noble lie, something that's used to benefit humanity as a whole.
So what do you think? You think there's such a thing as a noble lie, Chad?
That's older than the Bible, by the way. The concept of a noble lie.
Where's it come from?
It's ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian.
Okay, so we should follow the ancient Greeks and Egyptians.
They had pretty good ideas about a lot of stuff. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth. Was it 1,000 years before Christian monks did?
See, that's the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem with really smart, what I quote unquote smart guys, is that they go, well, they found the cure for cancer. That was awesome.
They kind of did.
You're right. That was awesome. But what does that have to do on a social, emotional, or spiritual level?
Well, I mean, they were right about that. How is it that they could?
Hitler was right about some things too, but
oh, great!
Definitely,
you just Godwin the whole podcast.
Samsung makes good TVs. You're going to buy their silverware
if they make good silverware.
But what you don't know that, right?
Exactly.
See, but that's the point. Just because they're right about one thing doesn't mean they're right about everything. And that
that applies to Christianity also.
Not the Bible.
No, it does. If they're right about one thing, and they're wrong about something else, maybe they're wrong about everything.
Well, they being who?
The Bible. Maybe if the Bible's wrong about one thing, it's wrong about everything.
So what's the Bible's one thing that it's wrong about?
Evolution, creation of the universe, lots of things.
The creation of the universe?
Yeah.
So it's wrong?
It presupposes that it was created by something.
Okay, so how was it created?
No one knows. That's a satisfying answer. If you need an answer for that, you have to ask, what does that answer mean in your life? Evolution is actually a useful one because we can apply it to science. We can apply it to solving. So you're
saying the number one question that we all wonder about.
Well, don't you wonder how you came to be? How you came to be an ape human?
You're telling me that the number one question on everybody's mind that so far has not been answered is not worthy of being wondered about?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it's a little bit self-centered, don't you?
Interesting.
Like the most powerful being in the universe cares about me. The most powerful being in the universe gives a crap how I feel and what I do.
If you created life, would you care about it?
No.
So if you had children, you wouldn't care about them?
I care about them.
He has 2 kids.
I do have 2 kids. If I created life, I didn't create them. I'm their father. That's completely different. I did not create them.
Who created them?
The presupposition about Christianity is that God created man in his image, right? I didn't have a choice about that with creating my sons. That's the way biology works. So if I had that option, then I would probably care a little bit, not a lot. I'm the creator of the universe. Why would I care about one rock on one planet? Doesn't matter to me.
He cares about the life. He cares about the people.
Does he?
Yes.
Like, we had this discussion about this, about how for, let's say, the conservative estimate, 100,000 years, humanity was suffering in ignorance of God. That there was no messenger, there was no concept of God for almost 100,000 years of human history. And then all of a sudden, he sends one messenger in the Middle East 2,000 years ago from us, but back then, I mean, it was 100,000 years of human history, human suffering, human death, and living and dying. And
so let's assume
he decided to wait 100,000 years of human life to finally send a messenger.
Do you think
that seems like he doesn't really care?
Do you think it's possible that was the right time?
No, maybe it was better to send it sooner.
Why?
if he cared about us, he would have sent it sooner, don't you think?
So one problem.
In your perspective,
so your
scale of time.
Hold on.
No, because you're poking holes in my argument. I want to actually make sure you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, if your kid didn't know how sex works, would you explain it to her, or would you wait until she's 16, 17, trying to figure it out for herself? Would you wait and keep her in ignorance until she's making mistakes, until she's doing things wrong for her whole teenage life?
So explain to me how that analogy, would you
keep your creation in ignorance? No, would you keep them in ignorance?
Would I keep them in?
Yeah, see, now, can you have a better morality than God?
You had mentioned being self-centered earlier, right?
Yeah.
I think that question might, like, just even trying to figure, like, okay, let's go into weird Christian land, okay?
Oh boy, in the bubble.
I want you to go in the bubble for a second,
right,
Eric, because you do this.
Stepping in the bubble.
Yes, thank you. He's good. He's a good guy. I felt like Donald Trump just then. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
Comes highly recommended. He's one of the best.
No, believe me. I know good guys. If anybody knows good guys,
I know the best of guys, and this is one of those.
And I will hire them.
So, stepping into the Christian bubble, okay? If you believe that there was a God that knew more than any of us could ever know in this natural state that we're in right now, right? Don't you think it's a little self-centered for us to presuppose or to figure out answers to why things happen the way they do when we don't have that knowledge yet, and we can't, and we don't? Don't you think it's self-centered to say, well, then this is the answer?
Well, no. Inside the bubble, it would be, I trust God to give me the answer when I'm ready for it.
But what? No, but I'm asking
I'm
you.
Inside the bubble. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I just wanted you to get enough inside the bubble to pretend like there is such a thing as God.
Yes, if you believe, then you trust and you have faith.
Okay,
that you will get the answers that you need.
So, do you see why
when you need them?
The answers don't matter.
That's what my point of view is.
But that's kind of the point. If you're in the bubble and you believe, the answers don't matter.
And if you're outside the bubble, it doesn't matter anyway.
Because you're going to go to eternity with God, and none of those things matter anyway. How the earth was created will not matter in eternity.
Yeah. Does it though?
Good point. But my question specifically was for you to go into the bubble enough to just say, okay, let's pretend that there's such a thing as an all-knowing, all-powerful God, right?
Okay.
Is it self-centered for me, who's not all-knowing and all-powerful, to basically say, well, I wouldn't have done it that way, or he did it wrong?
Why would that be bad?
Self-centered.
Is it self-centered? To be curious?
Yeah. No, not to be curious. To say, I know better, and therefore I can't believe.
Is it possible that you could? Is the question.
No better than a God that's all-knowing and all-powerful?
Is it possible?
When I'm not?
Is it possible?
No.
You couldn't, because he exists outside of time, so he knows the beginning, the middle, and the end. We don't know the end.
I'm trying to stay inside the bubble on this one.
You can venture out if you want.
Well, outside the bubble, you'd assume that he wouldn't have that ability.
Which is good, because then you basically can be a God yourself.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because at that point you're limiting God to your own knowledge of what is possible.
If you don't limit God to what I think is possible, what anybody thinks is possible, there's still practical limitations. There's got to be.
So how would you have done it?
If
you were God, how would you have done it? As far as...
Don't you think you would have informed them a little sooner?
Okay,
He did. He informed the very first two.
Okay, and then waited 100,000 years to let the messenger, the Messiah, arrive. Let's say that Adam and Eve did exist, because I don't believe that they did.
Okay, so according to the
human genome just doesn't work that way.
According to the we'll get to that. According to the Bible accounts, like Chad said, first human beings got the what they needed. They
wait a second. Who were Adam and Eve's children? Did they have any daughters?
They would have had daughters, but those weren't mentioned in the times.
They weren't mentioned in the Bible?
They don't mention. They mention only the male children for a while.
Yeah, which actually is that's cultural.
Yeah, that's cultural for the time.
For the times. But okay, but let me go back to my question, because my brain is very very transient. So what was I saying? This is the problem with
Adam and Eve.
Oh, okay, Adam and Eve, right? So so the narrative is he tells them, they decide to disobey. There's consequences to disobedience, just like in every other thing in life. There's consequences to your decisions. The consequence is that you guys now live on earth and all the other stuff, right? They live on earth. God is still there. God is still informing people. People, they get to a place that they're so far away from God and so bad, right? Which is, that's our human condition, that we are in need of someone, right? God, to save us, right? Therefore, he puts God in the form of human. I know, he's laughing. Into the world to be able to...
Makes perfect sense.
No, but are you even thinking about it?
I am thinking about it.
I think what's going on right now is Charlie Brown's teacher right now. It's like, wah, 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 wah. I don't think you're listening.
No, I'm listening. You're saying that he did do what I'm suggesting he did not do.
I think what you're...
And you're poking the hole in, well, how could you know when the right time was?
Well, how is that not the right time? I'm saying if you were to do it, how would you do it?
You're implying you would do it after the very first person?
Probably, yeah.
And what's it, by the way?
But see, the brokenness is still going to apply.
It's inside. We talk about the bubble, right? The bubble's inside belief. If you're outside belief, you don't believe any of that stuff ever happened. So inside the bubble, if you believe that, there's no way to win, because you're stuck inside a framework that you have to presuppose that God knew what was the right path, and you don't know better. If you're outside the bubble, that never happened.
Okay.
That there was no Adam and Eve, there was no first two people. All of that's just the story that was made up to explain how humans came to be, because people didn't understand how evolution worked in 600 BC. So that it's like arguing inside fan fiction. I can't outsmart the fan fiction.
Okay. So you're saying
I'm outside of it, then I can obviously outsmart it.
Okay.
Obviously, the story of Adam and Eve is just a story. It didn't really happen.
I wouldn't say you're outsmarting anything. What I would say is that you're throwing the cards or the checkerboard over.
No, I'm saying that I can't win at chess playing on a checkerboard. That's the situation.
Okay.
So, you get that analogy? You get that?
No, I didn't get it.
Or if we're playing checkers, I can't win at a game that we're not playing.
No, it's too difficult for my pea-sized Christian brain to understand. All right.
The rules
don't... So yes.
Within the rules, you're always going to win at checkers. But if I'm
okay, let me ask you a question. If Christianity was so flawed, you'd be able to play within the rules and poke holes in it.
It's not.
But the only
not though.
But the only hole poker,
brilliant.
The only hole poker that you have, it's brilliant, or is it truth?
It's brilliant from a sociological point of view. It's a brilliant control tool. It's a brilliant way of getting
Nietzsche.
Yeah, it is. It's a brilliant way of getting people to fall in line and follow the rules and live lives that are useful to other people.
And in that, what you said, the whole point of how you'd like to see the world be.
Well, I mean, not for that specific purpose, not for the glory of God. But
why not? For the glory of yourself?
Kind of limitations.
See, my issue with a lot of...
the survival of the species is what's important, and we're kind of stuck on one planet right now. And we're fighting over myths that were written thousands of years ago when we don't really face the existential crises that are facing us.
Like what?
Well, I'm gonna throw out global warming because there might be people who don't believe in that. But any one asteroid comes along and we're done. Yep. Our species is done.
Hey, newsflash, you're done either way. You'll be done of cancer, you'll be done of a car crash.
But the species is what matters.
Okay.
Like, the fact that we go on.
Why? Why is that so important to you?
Survival doesn't matter to you. Whether you're a Christian or not.
I believe in an eternal life. The ultimate survival of the species.
Don't you want your daughter to survive?
Don't you want your grandchildren to survive? When the species ends, they'll be with us in eternity, right?
They may be.
And
you can believe that, but don't you want them to survive? That's what I'm trying to get
to. To what end?
So that they have grandchildren and they have grandchildren.
To what end? For what? For what?
Just the perpetual existence of humankind?
Yes.
To a point where you are nothing...
Nah, I don't think so. I think that humanity has this not humanity. I think Christians have this idea that humanity is so somehow flawed and imperfect and broken and
You think it's perfect and not
disgusting.
broken?
I think that it's a beautiful accident.
I think
and it's wonderful.
I think it's a beautiful creation.
I think it's a beautiful accident.
So right then and there, I'll say, no, Christians don't believe that we're, a terrible thing that shouldn't be around. We're so special that God actually does love us, actually does care about us, and wants to put us in a place, in the exact place that you said you want to be.
I'm talking about purpose. You're assuming purpose. I'm saying that there is none except survival. It's the only thing that matters.
But that's not a good purpose.
Why isn't it? Why is survival so terrible?
Well, you tell me why it's so great. Why is
living for eternity for God so great?
Because that's where we belong.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what you believe.
And see, this is the problem. When we talk,
I think it's scary as hell.
Why? Why so scary?
Because what if I don't like him? What if I don't like the idea of living forever? What if I don't like the idea of eternal? We had this discussion with Eric. He said, you like ice cream. Imagine having ice cream every day for the rest of eternity. Like, that doesn't sound too great after about 1,000 years or about 1,000,000 years.
I think that's a bit reductionist.
No, it's not. It's an acknowledgement of reality. Your brain's trying to comprehend eternity, and you're seeing it as this wonderful thing. I'm seeing it as a terrifying thing.
Yeah, but the question is, what do you see? You see it as ice cream every day, and then you'll get sick of it, right?
I'm seeing it as, you say that there's no comprehension of time in eternity. You start to lose comprehension of it, right?
There's no such thing as time.
Okay, so time doesn't exist. So, what gives meaning to your existence at that point?
God.
Exactly. I think that's a cop-out.
How so?
I think that's a total cop-out.
How so?
Because you're just translating it. You're saying that, okay, well, no existence, or you're saying no meaning is horrible, but meaning for God only is great. And there's no rationale there. It's just, okay, I'm going to exist for eternity for God, for the glory of God, and for happy. And
for a perfect relationship.
Exactly, and it's like, what's the point of it at that point?
For a perfect relationship with your Creator.
What's the point of it at that point? You're stuck.
What's the point of God creating you?
I don't believe he did. I don't believe that he exists.
So why were we created?
I don't know. No one does. We just do. We exist.
Christians
We're here
do.
to survive. Like in the bubble, it makes sense. It makes sense to live your life for the glory of God. It makes sense to live live with the hope of eternity in God's with God. But outside of it, if you start to think about it outside of that frame of thought, you start to wonder, like, well, what is eternity really going to be like?
Doesn't that hopelessness bother you?
No, it doesn't. It gives me a lot of hope, actually. Like that,
hope for
you
what?
See it as hopelessness, right? That there is no purpose. I see it as we get to exist.
Okay.
There are so many things out. Think of the universe, right? Just our solar system. We've got 8 planets. Now we have a 9th planet. We have a planetoid now. We don't have 9 planets. We have 8 planets, and only one of them has life. So just that fraction alone should say, wow, we are really freaking special in the universe. That we were able to evolve on this planet.
Do you believe?
It's amazing.
Now Eric is a tech guy. He's a tech geek. He loves technology. Right, Eric? You're always telling me about new technology that's coming out.
Great.
And I mean, he's got a deep knowledge of technology going forward and backwards. He could tell you stuff, probably
Roman robotics.
And all the cool stuff. Now, let me ask you a question. What useful thing that's been created had no purpose? Like, what purposeless thing that...
Are you kidding me?
Give me a purposeless thing.
There are...
Like what? Give me a purpose.
We got to call the patent office guy so he can show you all of the patents for useless inventions.
And
there are hundreds of thousands.
And who uses them?
Nobody. They're just inventions. They're out there. But there are some useful inventions.
So you're saying that a useful invention is probably better than a useless invention, correct?
Not necessarily.
So give me an example of a useless invention that has no use whatsoever.
Until it was incorporated into some other invention, and then it was made useful.
Okay, so not until it becomes purposeful does it have real worth?
We have a lot of biochemical patents like that. They're chemicals that are patented, and
we just don't know what to do with them yet.
They have a use. We don't know what to use.
But we're Snuggie.
Snuggie.
Yeah. What was that for?
It keeps you warm, and there's a lot of...
That's what a blanket does.
So my question is this, okay? Does somebody, like, I never understood this in atheism.
Oh, boy.
people that are all about utility and usefulness are saying that life itself is useless and purposeless.
I never said that in this whole conversation.
No,
I said life is fascinating and amazing and unique in the universe.
And you pointed towards the purpose being for us to continue on.
Yes, to survive. Because
what?
Think about all of the other...
That's circular thinking.
Not necessarily. Think about all the species that have gone extinct. We're in a competition. You're a capitalist. You should be all about competition.
Not for no ends.
To beat the other guy, to make more money than they do.
That's not a Christian perspective.
Okay. Are you a capitalist or are you a Christian? Or are you both?
I'm a Christian.
Okay, so you're not a capitalist.
Honestly, if we got into a debate about capitalism, I wouldn't be able to go far. I'll tell you this: I make money, and I thank God I'm in America, where a guy with my background can make a way for my family, and be able to ride a Sea-Doo every once in a while. Actually, I've only ridden a Sea-Doo once, but anyway. So
ultimately, your objective is to live a good life and enjoy it.
No, my objective is to live eternity in relationship with our Creator.
For the here and now.
That's now.
For here and now, it's to live.
Yeah, because right now is determining that future.
So all the nice things about life, they're just...
Enjoy them. Help
nice
other
things.
people enjoy them, sure.
Yeah.
But what are those nice things?
Well, having a roof over your head, having a full belly,
Okay.
having a healthy kid.
Yeah, that's all good stuff.
Yeah.
That
That's survival. That's all that is.
That kind of helps the mission. Yeah, but
that's all that is survival.
But listen,
that's all that it supports is survival.
Right now you're talking about this, survival. Yeah. I'm saying that survival has a purpose beyond survival.
Oh. And what is that?
I already said it. To basically live in eternity in relationship with our Creator. Because we were created to do so. I don't know any other reason why we were created besides that. No other reason makes any sense.
How do you know you were created? That's the part that really boggles my mind.
Because I obviously was created.
You were born.
There was things about me, right, that do things. Like if I look at this bottle right here, right? This was created. This beer bottle was created to hold beer so I can drink it.
This beer bottle won't give birth to another baby beer bottle that'll grow up and hold beer.
No, I have to create.
That's a completely different system.
You even said earlier you couldn't create your children.
Exactly.
So
they're born.
show us anywhere in history where man has been able to create life themselves.
Not yet. We are at that point now in what is it, genetic engineering.
I want to pause. I'm sorry. I just want to pause right now. I'm sorry, Eric. I want to Usually we don't get down this deep, but
okay.
I want to say one thing.
Pause.
Eric just revealed his purpose, or a purpose that I think a lot of atheists look towards, and it is where man can become their own God.
Yes, you could use that terminology. Yeah, that's fair.
Because you decide the rules you live by, the morality you live by, and once you can create life on your own...
I think we do that anyway.
No, yeah, I know. That's part of our brokenness, I would say. I would say that's the reason why we have depression and anxiety and this postmodern...
Oh, I just meant our system of laws. The only reason that we have a legal system is consent of the governed. You can't have a legal framework without some kind of consent of the governed.
Oh, I'll do you one even better.
So
you can't have a law or laws without a lawgiver.
And
which is true. That's logical.
I won't obey a law unless it's under my own consent, and that's the way that the law works.
Which is fine. That goes back to free will.
Free will, yeah.
Yeah, but that's still the consent of the governed. I wouldn't consider that something that's divine. It's something that
why not
you take part in.
Why wouldn't you
Do
say
you vote?
Why would you say that? Like going back to truth. Why would you say that the truths that I found in my anthropological study isn't? Why do you think that that's something that doesn't transcend us? Why do you think that's not transcendental? The moral law, the moral law that we all know to be good.
I'd say that the transcendence is the consent. That's what it is.
Oh,
the fact that we all participate in a society together.
The fact that it is transcendent.
No, that the consent is that it's something that we all agree upon.
Yeah, but why do we all agree upon it?
We don't agree upon it.
Well, we don't all, but why would all?
Kinda do.
Why would most people?
Some cultures, it's completely fine to kill babies.
That's
and
not
kids
our
and stuff.
culture. That's the difference, right? American culture is based on the concept of consent of the
But we
government.
got to look at all cultures.
That's the thing. True laws and morality, if they're really true, should transcend and go and be in all cultures. So, but those you're saying some of those that we've made up, people are not.
Yeah, some of them are. Some of them are completely made up, like tax law. Yeah, who writes that? How is that morally derived divinely?
I wouldn't say tax.
Come on.
Well, I'd say
I wouldn't say it's divine.
That's what, but you can't go both ways on that. You got to have
there's
consent of the governed, or
there's
you can have,
man's law and there's God's law.
Okay, does God's law inform man's law?
Yes.
Okay, does it inform all of man's law?
No.
Okay, well then you have a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Humans are broken.
Which makes a fallen world.
Yeah. Humans are broken.
Well, what do we do? Do we try to figure out God's law and apply that to everyone universally, or do we?
Yes.
That's nuts. That's theocracy. That's crazy.
It's not theocracy.
We had that and it didn't work.
It's not theocracy.
Yes, it is.
How's that theocracy?
It's one person's interpretation of God's law being applied to everyone. That's
God's
theocracy.
law is pretty simple.
It's the enforcement that's a problem.
If everybody did it, you wouldn't need to enforce it.
That's what I'm saying. People are going to break laws no matter what.
Yeah.
That's the brokenness. So you don't have to worry about that.
So what we do is we write laws and we make a system of governance that can account for that.
Right, and I'd say
that's
and
what
I
I
would
would
say
say is the consent.
The laws try to keep people more in line than the Bible does.
Yes, they do. They try to keep social order. Joe, what was it in the Constitution? The preamble goes through what the purpose of the Constitution is for.
But if we lived like the church did in Acts 2:42 through 47, they gave all to all that had a need. They sold their possessions. No one had want. No one had need. They were all able to survive.
That sounds socialist.
But it's not, because it's not controlled by a government. The government didn't say, "Give me these things,"
It's
and
free will.
I'll put the. They gladly gave so that everyone in the community could survive.
And then the people who don't give, and the people who keep and take and keep and keep and keep.
But that's where the system breaks, right?
We ended up with that in the 16th century with an aristocracy, where the people who kept and the people who gave were so dramatically divided in wealth that they were able to oppress the people who did the right thing. And that's the whole point of the Enlightenment, was to say, you know what, maybe it's good to follow God's law, but maybe we need a little bit more than that. Maybe we need the consent of the governed to take from the people who should not be amassing such great wealth. And
those people will be judged differently too. I mean, they'll get judged on what they did. And
listen, guys, this is fantastic talk. But can I please
interject
and go to the comments that I've been neglecting?
No, I've been watching them.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You've been watching your comments.
I've been watching yours too.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on. So let's see. Jasmine says, when you're a little kid, the thought of living to be 30, 60 seems so long. Becoming an adult that makes their own decisions seems a long time away. Once you become an adult, you finally get how short life really is. Perhaps once we get to eternity, we'd be able to understand it better. And thank you, Eric, for that. Let's see.
Scale problem.
And there was something else. Somebody... Oh, okay. No, that was it.
Well, that brings up to Jasmine's point then.
Yeah.
If we can understand how to live for eternity now, then maybe we can make that not seem such a short scale in our lives.
Yeah. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Continue.
No, listen.
I don't have any comment on that. I think it's a pipe dream.
Right, because you can't imagine it.
No.
You can't imagine eternity.
I can, and that's what scares me, is that I can conceive of eternity.
But
it's terrifying.
But within a natural world that is time-based.
Okay, if you took time out of the equation, it is an eternity. The whole point of time is that it has a scale.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you can't apply a scale to a concept that's scaleless.
So just say timeless then.
Okay, if it's timeless, then it is pointless.
How so?
Because it happens in an instant and it's over.
How's it over?
Because time doesn't matter. Do you understand how that works? That if time doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter at all. That a moment is 1,000 years.
Okay.
So your eternity is a blink of an eye.
Right. So there's an end to eternity? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if it's scaleless, it doesn't happen. It's kind of like infinitesimally small or astronomically large. The scales are so far beyond our comprehension that when we actually get there, they're meaningless. They don't actually convey any information.
So what exactly?
So when you say eternity, what I hear is this scale of time that I'm incapable of comprehending that will happen either so quickly or so long that I won't be able to understand that it's happening.
So I'll give you this.
That's what scares me.
I'll give you this. Eternity is scary to anybody who thinks about it.
Yeah.
It's
driven a couple of mathematicians mad.
It's a big concept. I mean, to really reduce the whole thing, but it's a huge concept.
It's a little big.
A little big.
Yeah.
It's a little too big. However, it is kind of what you want and kind of what you don't want. I'm speaking for you, actually. It sounds kind of like what you want. Like scientists want to get to this place where they can live forever if they choose to.
Yes.
Because they want to experience it, make sure it's not so bad. My thing
I
is,
just want to experience more.
Just more.
There's so much more out there to experience.
And there's so many more things that you could do. And
I'm not saying just on Earth, though. Like, that's the part that I think maybe we're talking past each other on.
Oh, you're talking about interplanetary.
There's so much space out there to explore.
See, you're talking about universally. You're talking, but then
just
then
interplanetary, interstellar.
But then you got stellar. Then you got to talk about interdimensionally.
Yeah, there are billions of stars. There are billions of galaxies. There are billions of stars in billions of galaxies. There's so much out there to go see.
Now, what if we assumed that the after death is interdimensionality, where you go into another dimension?
I never said that that's not possible.
So, are you still scared?
Yeah. The reality is it's going to be stranger than anybody on this planet's imagined.
Yes.
You're always scared of the unknown, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you take comfort in the fact that you think you know what the unknown holds for you. And I think that that's generally the experience of someone who's religious is they've got an explanation for something that is unknown to everyone else.
You know what?
And they're satisfied with it.
As a Buddhist, the moment that you are satisfied with something is the moment that you are no longer...
Are you satisfied with eternity with God? That explanation?
What do you mean?
Are you happy with it? Or do you feel like you do not need any other explanations for your eternal existence?
Like, what's it going to be like? Do I wonder what it's going to be like?
You wonder what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
That explanation that you will be for all eternity with God.
It makes sense.
But that's a satisfying answer for you.
As far as I can... But I don't... But see, that's the thing. I'm not... yes, but I'm not... I'm also not going to go, and I know for a fact that this is how it's going to be and this is how it's going to feel.
Okay, so you have faith that it's going to be that way.
I have faith that God, if God does exist, if our Creator exists and does care about us and says this is going to be good, then it's going to be good.
Okay.
That's it. Anything past that, I don't know. And for me to worry about it is the same thing as the person that sits and worries about the stock market every day. And the next thing you know, stock market takes a crash. And even though stock markets take crashes and go back up, they kill themselves. Why? Because they're so afraid of the future at that point that they just can't live on because they're afraid of they think future is done. They don't have a future. You know what I mean? I think that you should never get wrapped up in anything on this earth that much.
Me neither.
That's bad. I mean, a Buddhist can tell you, even a Buddhist. So, what is it? So,
is it the two? What is it? The noble truths, the pillars. What are they called?
Yeah. God, it's been so long. The
suffering is suffering.
The 12 noble.
Suffering's inevitable is like the main one, right?
Yeah, but the point of Buddhism, where they go, anytime you start to grasp on something, start to fixate on something, you are in essence.
I remember this one.
Pushing yourself towards not being godly, reaching nirvana, which is the ultimate goal, is to reach nirvana, reach moksha, experience moksha, right? Enlightenment, and then become a Buddha yourself.
If I remember the Zen quote, it's if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Yeah. Yeah. That's how that works, is if you find some measure of enlightenment, you're supposed to step away from it. You're supposed to try to grok it. Drink it fully.
There's that word.
Wait for it.
There's that word again. Grok.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You ever read any Heinlein? Okay. What do you read for fun, Chad? Let's change topics.
For fun?
Yeah, what do you read other than the Bible?
Well, still mostly books that are still based on that, still premise. So I'm trying to think of the last time I read a book purely for entertainment and not learning.
Chad doesn't have any time. Chad.
Well, I was going to say, think. You're familiar with Clifton Strength Finders?
No, I'm not.
So Gallup had done this thing with Clifton, make this Strength Finders. Strength Finders 2.0 is the new one. It's actually very good. Leo, you're familiar with that, aren't you?
Yep.
And their concept is that they've polled, now I think they're in the like either millions or more people that they've put together through these tests to be able to really fine tune them. But there's 34 strengths that are given, they say, to people, and everybody has all 34. They're just in varying orders. And they'll give you your top 5. I think it's like $10 or $15. They'll give you top 5. And the reason they don't give you all of them is everybody would do the same thing. I'm going to go to number 34. What's my least?
And then try to
improve that.
Fix that one.
And it's their process is to say, look, go into your top 5 and focus your attention in trying to do the most you can in your top 5. Everyone's got to do things they don't like or that they're not good at, but can you surround yourself with people, or can you orient your job and things like that around your top 5, because you'll find they're easier, you'll actually enjoy them more, you'll be better at them, you'll be more productive. Well, my number 1 is learner. So I actually learn for fun. That's great for me. I love to learn, so I'm usually not reading fiction and things like that. It's pretty rare. I read...
Wait. You don't think you can learn anything from fiction?
I'm not saying I couldn't learn from fiction. I'm just saying I don't typically read fiction.
Okay.
I read more textbook kind of stuff. Like, you could give me a college textbook and then I'd sit down and read it, and that would be enjoyable.
That's insanity. I get it. I wish I had that as my number 1 gift during school. That would have been fantastic. Because I like reading, but I'm more of I feel like I need to either enjoy it, or it's got to be so segmented. Like, I segment the reading to purpose. Okay, what's my purpose for reading this? Like, I couldn't just sit down with a textbook. What I do is I go up to the textbook, I go right to the section that I need at that moment, and then that's kind of how I do the Bible too. You go right to the section that I need, right? But the cool thing is the Bible is written pretty well for an anthropologist or one that reads history, and I do enjoy history, so I guess that's kind of different. But
an example, yesterday I couldn't sleep. My wife was taking a nap. I was taking a nap. Kids were taking a nap. I woke up. Didn't really want to get everybody up yet. So I was like, saw an ad for like a craft brew, like to make your own beer, a fermenter. And I was like, I looked at it and I was like, wonder what goes into brewing beer in your like home brew stuff. So I spent a half an hour just researching different malts and things like that and how you would put them in the recipes and all that stuff. Absolutely no purpose. I have no intention on going out and starting homebrew, but I just did it because I wanted to learn some of it.
Just totally fascinated by it.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's cool. Yeah, no, it's good. That's good. I feel like more human beings should just learn things as opposed to...
That's a Heinleinism, by the way.
Worried about...
Just saying.
I'm sure it is.
What, more human beings learn things?
Yeah, he had a really cool philosophy about it. He had like a list of things every human being should be capable of doing. Building a fire, cutting a deer, fishing with very few supplies.
When are we going hunting?
Driving a manual shift.
Yeah, I think that was one of them.
Oh, they're trying to tear that away from us with these paddle shifters. I drove a paddle shifter car the other day. I borrowed a friend's car, and I was like, no,
dude. In 20 years, nobody's going to be driving manually. Nobody's going to be driving
for
by
fun.
hand
For fun.
Well,
in
this country.
Yeah, in the U.S.
Yeah. All right, so we are at the end of the show. Did it fly by, Chad?
Of course.
Yeah, man. We always have a good time. Everybody says, all of our guests say, hey, we're done? Yeah, we're done. Sorry, bud. We're going to have to come in the next time and, try to hit the different topics, Try to hit different topics each time. I feel like we got in a good place. Eric, what do you think, man?
It was pretty good. Good combo.
Yeah. So, Chad, if you have any plugs, can you please plug them now?
You put me on the spot for that.
That's right. The most important thing will pop in your head.
I got some people plugs.
Go for it.
Yeah, so tomorrow will mark the 2nd year anniversary of me moving from the marketplace into ministry. And so I have Mike Fuster and Pat Ferguson and Cree Branson to thank for for that. So
Right on. Cool.
and obviously my wife and all of her support along the way.
You're becoming a minister?
So I started working as a minister for the church 2 years
Neat.
ago.
Yeah. In what capacity? What do you do?
Utility player. So there's a lot of basically, little bit of everything kind of feel. Fill in all the gaps where different things need to be done. Some of the responsibilities are like Sunday mornings, handling Sunday morning at the church and handling the men's ministry and discipleship of the men, that kind of stuff.
Right. So hey, what's that? Are we allowed to talk about the men's ministry thing and point people that direction or no?
Sure.
All right. Can you give the plug for that?
Men's ministries on Facebook, New Life Men, New Life Christian Church, and you can get the links through there too. Or you can go to newlife.church/men, and there's links on that to go to different things. But we have a men's ministry that's starting to build, and we have different groups and some different courses. It's more like building teams. So we're trying to get guys to go around different activities. Guys seem to bond a lot around activity.
Yeah.
Like to do things together.
They call that shoulder to shoulder bonding.
Yep.
Whereas women
face to face.
Usually do face to face. So a lot of like going out and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe talking, maybe not talking. Usually talking, right?
Yeah.
All right.
So we're trying to build more of that around those kind of affinities, which is really cool. I'm really excited to see that. A lot of guys are coming around that and excited about that. And then helping to strengthen men's bonds in their marriages and in their families. That seems to be an area in society that I'm sure even Eric can agree with, that men seem to struggle and flounder when you get them into families and marriage and stuff like that, and trying to figure out what to do and how to handle that. And so I've spent a lot of time. That's been a passion of mine for a while now, just because I came from a background in that's troubled to some extent. My real father died when I was 2, so grew up with a stepdad. And that wasn't as pleasant as it probably could have been. So
yeah.
Stepfathers, am I right?
Yeah. Am I right? Anybody? Yeah. No. Men. Oh, go ahead.
No, I do want to say that kind of there's a lot of toxic masculinity out there, and it's a lot of responsibility put on the shoulders of guys who really don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And I think a lot of them, they get frustrated and lash out, and society likes to blame them for not manning up and not being a man enough or stuff like that, and I think that's really unfair.
Well, they don't give them any training either, right?
Yeah.
So they just throw them out in the world and say, okay, you're 18 or 26 or whatever it is that you move out of the house.
Go start a family.
You're a man, and you gotta step up, you gotta man up and just handle it. And there's no how, right?
Yeah.
And
no,
if they
there's
don't
no
have a mentor
tools, no training, no mentor. Whereas in other cultures, I keep banging this drum.
Oh, great.
There's no rites of passage. There's no training.
We need a walkabout. American walkabout. We need to smoke the peyote. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Have a spirit quest.
He's like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think the Native Americans got that right. No, but yeah. So what Chad's talking about, the men's group, basically what that is helping train men to be men, as opposed to the sorry excuses that we all have seen in our lives, in our personal lives. So I want to go ahead and thank Chad for coming on today. Again, you can check him out. He's over at New Life Church. What is it? New
Life Christian Church.
New Life Christian Church. It's newlifeforme.org. .com.
Or newlife.church is the easy one.
Newlife.church. Wow, they got that one? That's incredible how many new lives there are out there.
Pat jumped on that.
Way to go, Pat. So final words. If you enjoyed this or any of our past podcasts, please consider supporting us in 2 ways. First, give this video a like and share it to your feed, please. If you don't share it to your feed, guess what? Nobody knows about it except for you, and you don't want to be a selfish little prick. Second, go to epilogueshirts.com and pick up a t-shirt that fits your style. We're updating the site with new designs every week, and if you don't see a design that you like, message us right here on Righteous Anger Podcast, or you can go over to Epilogue Apparel. That's our Facebook page. And, if we like it, we're going to go ahead and send you some swag with your ID on it. Epilogue is running a special for listeners of the Righteous Anger Podcast. Just enter RAP10. I say again, RAP10. That's RAP10 in the promo code box on checkout to receive 10% off your entire purchase. The more you buy, the more money you save. And of course, the more you support the work that we do on Righteous Anger Podcast, the more awesomeness that you get from us. Eric, can I get an amen?
Hallelujah, brother.
That's even better than an amen.
I know. I love making him do cool things like that, I guess. Also, another way you can personally help the show, please let us know great topics or guests that we should have on the show. Just message us on the Righteous Anger Podcast Facebook page. And finally, thanks for listening. Okay, next week, we will be inviting the funny and talented Allison Ruck. She'll be on here talking about comedy, the stand-up comedian life, and the creepy men who come to her shows and basically stalk her on social media. Okay, funny story, Eric.
Those are guys that need to be in the men's ministry.
Yeah, they definitely need to learn manhood better.
Something.
Eric, what was I going to say to you?
Something.
What was I going to say to Eric? Oh yeah, funny story with Allison. So Allison knows me. We've known each other for a few years, and I'm sending her invites to the show. This is like a month ago. I'm like, hey, love to have you on the show. We haven't had a female comedian on. Would love to have you on the show. No answer. So then I send the passive aggressive, hey, let me know that you're live or something. You know, be nice to hear for, like total, that's the voice. But of course it didn't come across like that, or maybe it did, depending on how you read it. And finally she came back and said, she apologized profusely and said, look, I don't check my Twitter anymore because I get too many death threats type of things or sexual thingies, or because she's a very attractive young lady in the comedian world. And apparently that's a dog eat dog world. Like,
yeah.
I saw some of the tweets that were going back and forth, like guys that run these comedy like showcases and things. And it's like, she's got more courage in her little finger probably than I have in my whole body because of just the things I was reading on there. It's just insanity. So she's going to come on the show. She was right on it. She'll be here next week, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. So look forward to seeing and hearing the great Allison Ruck. Like I said, she's a up-and-coming comedian. I didn't say comedian. I don't think that's cool anymore. Eric?
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
We refuse. So thank you guys for listening. This was Rap, the Righteous Anger Podcast, episode 15 with Chad Booher. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Chad.
Thank you for having me.